Hi, I'm Ron.
And I'm Don.
And this is the Ron and Don Show. We're pleased to bring you today an episode on getting ready for summer. And while there are a lot of things that one needs to consider for their restaurants as we roll into summer, what we're going to talk about specifically today has to do with landscape of the exterior surfaces of a restaurant. And for this conversation, we're bringing in yet again our expert from DENTCO, Trent. Thank you for being with us today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
DENTCO is our sponsor again, and DENTCO is an exterior services management company. I want to say thank you to DENTCO for sponsoring us today, and I know Don does too.
And what I really appreciate is this is a major company that covers all over the United States. Their customers have taken them and made them grow into areas that they weren't servicing before. They are nationally known and their reputation is stellar. And for that, I appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and I'm looking forward to doing another segment with you guys.
Well, fantastic. Well, why don't you, we've used a lot of words already to describe DENTCO, but why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about DENTCO?
So and a little bit more about DENTCO is, we've been around for 41 years, and I think that speaks a long way that we've built up an infrastructure that's allowed us to become a great provider nationwide for landscaping, snow removal, and parking lot maintenance. And those are kind of the main things that we focus on when it comes to managing your exteriors.
What does a typical restaurant need to start thinking about as the coolness of spring is starting to wane and the heat of summer is starting to approach?
Yep. So the first thing I think about when you say the word heat is making sure you've got your irrigation up and running. We talked a little bit about the last segment about irrigation. Now's the time to make sure that your spray zones, your zones are dialed in. You've got your nozzles adjusted, that everything's getting water, everything's being properly irrigated to the right amount. And, having a rain sensor is important too. If those systems have a rain sensor, you're going to be saving time and money on over irrigating, which to me is important. And in California and other states, there's Texas, there's a lot of regulations that come involved with that. So rain sensors are important, but most importantly, making sure your irrigation's ready for the heat of the summer and being able to keep all those plant life alive on your sites.
I was just going to say that I think there's a lot of regulations out there that can fine you pretty stiffly if you got your sprinklers running in the middle of a rainstorm.
DENTCO has had a lot of experience working in Texas and in California, and we've had to comply with a lot of different regulations all the way down to certain counties have different regulations. So the main thing is make sure the heads are adjusted, and if there is a damage or a leak or something happens at the site where a head gets run over or a line gets broken, you get out there and you get it shut off right away.
Well, it's not only from a regulatory standpoint, when the guests are coming into the restaurant and they're not allowed to go wash their car or irrigate at home, and you've got water running across the parking lot to the storm drain. They're not exactly coming in with a positive attitude into the restaurant, and that guest experience has already been compromised before they got in the door.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right, so just like in the prior episode, it sounds like irrigation is the foundation of anything and everything you need to do. So once we've got that addressed, what else are we looking at?
If some of that plant life has died off, then you've got to think about when is the right time to replace it. And depending on where you're at, and we've done a lot of installs, nationwide at DENTCO, and it's really about timing and making sure that they're irrigated when you're doing a new install or just replacing plants in a bed. So you want to make sure if you're going to remove them, we tend to wait a little bit longer to replace, especially in southern climates. We might wait till September or October to put in those new plants, so that way we're not stressing them out from the get-go. It's better, in my eyes, to have an empty spot with no plant than to have a dead one. So remove that plant, come up with a game plan with your vendor on when you're going to install a new one, and then make sure it's watered.
When you get to the point where you're choosing what to replace it with, and the manager he just loves nice thorny roses and he wants them by the front door, or we're in Texas and I got to have a mesquite tree out there close to the front door with all those thorns. And or I used to live where I could have a pine tree. Can I have one of those here? Talk about choosing the right plants.
Yep. So, our rule of thumb is putting the right plant in the right place. And you're going to want to base it on the hardiness zones and what is going to allow for the best amount of growth and development of that plant. And then you got to think about if it's a plant drought tolerant and it is a native species to that area. And those are the kinds of things we look for at DENTCO when we're doing different installs or helping customers do remodels of their landscaping or just replacing, material that's died off over the years.
Do you ever have plants that have substantially outgrown its space?
Absolutely. I think a prime example of that is the juniper. Those are plants that I would consider trash collectors once they get too big, So those are things that they grow so much over the years and they last a very long time. But once they've kind of reached the end of their life cycle, you've got to really consider removing them. And there's going to be a cost associated with that. But, you can get those out and put in something fresh. And, I think it will really help improve the landscape overall.
All right, so we've talked about irrigation, we've talked about some of the shrubs and vegetation. Talk to us about turf. What happens in the summertime, for the first time, if you will, with turf?
Yep, so you've got to set kind of your mowing schedule. You got to think about what your cutting height's going to be. Those are two important factors to consider coming out of the spring and then getting into the summer. And then you're also you've got to watch for dry spots, areas that might not be getting irrigated, checking on those areas to make sure they're being watered. If something starts, drying out, you've got to think to yourself, why is that looking that way?
But I'm a restaurant manager. I don't have time to think about that. Why do I have to watch for that?
Well, that's why you hire DENTCO, because we will come in and we monitor that stuff via our inspections and our picture reviews and our contractors out in the field, and we can help out with being proactive when we see stuff going wrong. But when it comes to the turf grass, having a good fertilizer schedule or program is probably the easiest way to just build turf density and add that good green color to your turf that everybody wants. And nitrogen is the easiest way to do that. So a urea, a 4400, slow release 3 times a year, and make sure it gets watered, and you'll have some happy grass.
Terrific. Now, I want to press a little bit harder on something you just said. You mentioned that DENTCO has a process in their exterior service management of, I would assume, some type of feedback from the field. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, all of DENTCO's contractors are required to use the DENTCO Verified mobile app. So we have a reporting system. When our contractors go to a site, they check in on the app. A GPS stamps where they're at. So we verify that they're at the site, and then they'll check any services that they provide during that time that they're there. And then after the service is complete, they go and sign, and they get the app signed. And then when they check out, it does another GPS stamp.
So the manager has to sign something before they're allowed to leave. So if he wants to walk out and say, I told you I need this bush cut, and it goes out, oh, you did cut that bush.
Yes.
So,
and that's a simple way of just building a relationship with your contractor and the manager at the site. And we want to make sure that at the end of the day, when our contractors are leaving your site, you're happy with the service they provided.
Don, I'm going to defer to you because from a facility manager perspective, you've certainly done your share of landscaping contracts over the years. What do you look for?
Oh, I just look for a bunch of goats out there chewing and fertilizing. But
Let me ask from another angle. What does DENTCO offer when they offer a contract to a restaurant chain?
So building a scope of work is vital to having a good landscape maintenance program. And every customer is a little bit different, and we'll tailor the scope of work to fit your needs. But I think the main thing that comes up no matter what the customer is or what they're looking for is, how often is my grass getting cut, and how are you keeping my beds weed free? I mean, those are the two main things that I feel not only employees at the site notice, but your customers are going to notice too. So setting up a good scope of work that has, a standard practice for litter and weed control and a mowing frequency and a pruning schedule, I think those are the 3 most important parts to kind of agree upon. And then if you want to get into more specifics based on what your site needs or what overall your brand is looking to go for, then that's when we can tailor that scope of work to fit your needs.
Well, you mentioned pruning.
Yeah.
Security is a key issue, and
Yeah.
it's very easy for somebody with larceny in their heart to hide behind a bush near the front door or somewhere on property. Talk about how you can help the restaurants in that.
Yep. So, things that we look for when we're reviewing inspections or talking to our contractors in the field is we're looking around the entrances. We're making sure that those are kept pruned and clear. We've talked about emergency exits, making sure that any shrubs or hedgerows around those exits are kept clear so that, allows easy escape, if needed in the case of a fire or anything like that. So safety concerns are an issue. And when we do our inspections, we get pictures of all that information and it's relayed back to you if we see an issue. Another thing that we look for in pruning is coming up with kind of a standard height. So depending on how high you want us to prune your trees, I think 8 feet is a good starting point, 7 or 8 feet, making sure we're keeping the trees high enough that people can walk under them. And then, when they get out of their car, they're not hanging down under their truck or their car. So keeping those, a 12-inch clearance from any cars is important. We build that into most of our specs. It's a pretty standard thing we do. And then another thing we look for with pruning too is around the sign. We want to make sure that the shrubs aren't overgrowing your sign. We want your customers to be able to see, this is my restaurant, please pull in. And we want that signage to look good.
Well, let me throw one other thing at you.
Yeah.
Particularly up north with mansard roofs and all kinds of snow loads that come off of roofs in a slide onto bushes. It's pretty easy to have branches broken. If the pruning isn't done regularly on those bushes, they're going to grow long, heavy branches. Now you have a huge hole in the tree where if you keep them pruned, you promote smaller growth, and if you won't have it nearly as much, you'll have more frequent growth of smaller branches. Yeah. And you won't have those big holes in the shrub or tree or whatever. And the other thing is, what do you do to keep birds from perching over cars while people are eating so we don't have messes on their cars?
Put up umbrellas.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But going back to the building and, trees, a thing we really look for is how close are those trees and those big branches coming towards your building? Yes. And if our spec height is 8 feet, you've got to start to think about doing some additional pruning to make sure you're keeping those higher branches and bigger branches away from the building. So like you talked about in the winter, we don't have to worry about that falling down on the building.
Or storms blowing the tree and damaging the building.
Yeah. So it's important to really watch for, I'd say, the growth around the entrances and the growth on the larger trees hanging over the building and making sure you're doing a preventative maintenance and getting those pruned accordingly.
One of the other things that's really important when we talk about contracts is being very specific in the contract of how much fertilizer, what's the spread rate, how frequently, same thing with pest controls, and that they have their MSDS sheets and all that kind of stuff with them. All the specifics of the services that are going to be provided. You don't want a contractor that says maintain landscaping. The other thing is you don't want people pruning bushes that they just take off the new growth, because that's how your bushes get out of control big. You want them to keep them to a size in which means they may be pruning off some of last year's growth as well. So there's a couple of things you need to be very specific in the contract of the work that you need to have done.
Yep.
As you take on new clients, regional clients or perhaps national clients, I'm sure that they come to you because they're looking for that consolidated approach to managing their exterior facilities, exterior services. When they do that, I've got to imagine that they've got little pockets around the country or around the region that they've got great contractors. Yeah. So how do you integrate the locations with some level of let's hang on to the guys that are doing a really great job?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that comes up with every new contract that comes on board.
Imagine.
Yeah, so I mean, we are happy to work with your current contractor that you have at your site as long as they meet DENTCO's requirements. And that's what I explain to new customers or clients that are coming on board is, who are the people that you like? What do you like about them, is the main thing. And As long as they meet DENTCO's requirements and meet our contractual agreements, we're happy to use them. But more importantly is if you can provide a list to us of contractors that you don't want us to use, that's what really helps us. Provide us a list of incumbents if you have it. If not, we'll find the best one for the site. But we really don't want to put somebody on your site that you're not happy with.
Today we're talking with Trent from DENTCO about getting ready for summer. Trent, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Trent, and appreciate your sponsorship as well.
Yep, thank you very much.
How do we get a hold of DENTCO?
Easiest way to get a hold of DENTCO is just to go to our website, dentco.com. All of the information that you might need to consider starting a consolidated landscaping or snow removal program can be found on there, along with a bunch of other information about the company. So dentco.com, DENTCO.com.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Don.
And I'm Trent.
This is the Ron and Don Show. Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe.